Okay, hi everybody, and good morning from Finland, rather than from Arizona or someplace in the southwest of America, of the United States. Um, Tuija and I have just recently returned from the conference, which I think offered the opportunity to explore the third ray from the most abstract aspects of it. Well, I can't say most abstract, but highly abstract aspects of it, all the way down to the practical manipulations which are required in order to exercise creative intelligence. And I just wanted to say that somewhere I have this, yes, the name for our coming conference is as follows. And I'm going to put it inside the chat box in case you're not aware of it. And, one may think, well, it's a bit early in the day to think about coming to the next conference, but I think not. I think the fourth ray is extremely important in terms of the new group of world servers and the energy of Taurus, and of course the energy of Scorpio. So our title will be, and I think it's quite comprehensive title, the new group of world servers leading humanity towards harmony, beauty, and truth. All of these are great Buddhic factors with which the fourth ray of harmony through conflict and harmony, beauty, and art are correlated. So mark this on your calendars. We begin with our ceremonial workshop in the pre-conference on the 28th of April. That's a Tuesday. And we go all the way through for about 12 days until the 10th of May, which is the Sunday. We have also, this particular time, the Wesak is included in the process. It was not last time, and instead we celebrated the Taurus new moon. At the time of the new moon, I am broadcasting these solar fire musical rituals and meditations, and I'm very happy when you join me in those. Well, they're rather lengthy meditations, okay, but more like an opera, I guess. But thank you for joining me in those. We have quite a bit coming up now. We have the Gemini work, which will bring us 3 days ahead of the full moon webinar, and I think it starts on the 12th. Each day has its own keynote, and we'll be meditating, however briefly, on those keynotes, and then the pre-full moon, and then the actual full moon. So we actually really have 5 events associated with the Gemini full moon. It's such an important sign when it comes to the kind of work that Master DK has done, and Alice Bailey and Foster Bailey and Mary Bailey and all those who were well equipped with the Gemini energy for spreading the knowledge of the ageless wisdom wherever a true response can be found. So I'm, trying to hit my stride again here after all of this work on the conference. So if I enter into a few stupidities here and there, please forgive me. We're going to just have a little alignment and then get into our reading for the day, which is a continuation of the kind of glamours that are encountered along the way by people at various stages of evolution. And I think we will find, that our own place and the kinds of glamours that we are dealing with. So there's a number of us who have gathered here this morning. I hope so anyway. Yep. I think it's we have to get ourselves organized once again, because yeah, we can easily drop the ball after not meeting for quite a while. I just want to welcome this morning here in Finland Barbara and Karen and Kim and Margot and Mariana and Marissa and Martha, Natney, Rebecca, Risto, Stacia, Suzanne, Walter, Winnie, Zenaidi, and Anne Veronica. It's not so good for people who are in the United States, this early morning schedule, but it's pretty good for Europe and the South Pacific. And grateful to have Michael Stacy backing me up here on the technical side of staff. So, okay, let's get into this a little bit. And we'll think outward in love towards each other. And wherever we may happen to be, we will bring ourselves into that sense of shared consciousness. Our time is the same, but our space is different. And yet we are gathered together with one receptive and transmitting stage of consciousness, so we can learn more, I think, together. And our purpose is to learn more about this world problem, which is still very much a world problem, even though the lesson sets may have been written maybe 85 years ago or a bit more, and it is glamour. And it does guide and compel and sway so many millions, even billions of people, and if we are honest with ourselves, we may find that we are not quite free of it either, depending upon our particular ray makeup and our experience in handling this obscuring problem. And then not only to learn more about it, but to apply our group energies according to occult methods so that we can help to dissipate these obscurations and distortions which prevent our registration of reality. We'll sound an Om together to confirm our orientation. Okay, well, where are we? Good question. We're here, beginning with program number 113 and reading number 53, and it's really not May at all. It's the 7th of June. Tuija and I were hoping to begin last week, but we discovered we were returning from the United States rather late in the day. So we just gave ourselves a little opportunity to get settled. Okay. And so we're beginning this week with the Ask program. which is the morning schedule. Difficult for people in the United States, but we'll be switching to the evening program next week, giving everybody a fair opportunity to join in, and for some of the diehards who staying up quite late or getting up at an outrageously early time in the morning, then we certainly appreciate your application to the process. All right. Now, we've been going through various stages of encountering glamour. And the first one is sort of the recognition and valuing of the material world. And of course, the great glamour of materialism. We are definitely subject to that on a third-ray planet, at least a planet whose personality is very strong, and on the third ray. The glamour of materialism actually is very far from broken these days, and many of the higher human values are prevented by looking after and valuing most highly the material phantom. The materiality that we see is an effect. It's not really listed among the real factors of life. It is an appearance, and we tend to be taken in by that appearance, and we judge by externals. The second ray is almost always more penetrating into the area of reality than the third ray, and it's such a problem putting the second and third ray together on our planet in terms of its soul and personality, but generically for every human being, putting the soul together with the personality in a state of infusion. That's the blending of the second and the third aspect, and they operate in very different ways. So we have to get rid of many external distortions before we can begin to sense in the stillness the inner God that we actually are, the inner reality which lies at the base of all things. And then the next stage, we've already dealt with these, but it was a long time ago, the man and his forces, and the individual becomes aware that he's being driven, shall we say, up and down the land without control of the forces which are impelling him. So at one point he has to use the planet Saturn, stand still, make an intelligent choice, and no longer be moved hither and thither by these impelling forces. Now we come up with a third stage, which seems to have many divisions as we get into it, and this is the Arjuna stage, or the Arjuna stage. And I think so many of us, well, humanity itself, being the fourth kingdom of nature and the fourth group of monads on the cosmic physical plane, really faces the Arjuna experience in an acute manner, torn between the high and the low, and maybe people who have a lot of fourth ray in their nature discover this particular type of battle. Humanity itself has the battle. It's a warring kingdom, but eventually it will be a peaceful kingdom under the second ray. But for now, the war under the fourth ray and the use of the concrete mind under the fifth ray to enhance the effectiveness with which that war is fought, these are very much the case with the human conditions at the moment. So it's the stage of the man and his forces, and I guess we would have to ask ourselves whether there are forces in our nature which are not under control, not under control. And each one of us might find something different, The way it operates is that the soul and personality each have a particular personality vehicle through which they work. The soul will be working through that vehicle which has a higher vibratory condition, and the personality through one of the other two which has a lesser vibratory condition, and one vehicle in the personality is not touched. And the question is it so well trained that it need not be directed and guided either by soul or personality, or is it perhaps out of control? Where you do have energies that are out of control, you often have a Mayavic situation, Maya. It's, as this book considers it at least, an aspect of glamour. And we're dealing there with what's called the etheric veil of impulsion. And we need to learn how to gain control. That is very much the theme of the first initiation, though control is exerted in an intensifying manner all the way along the ascent, the initiatory ascent. So we have to have a clear evaluation of ourselves and see when forces and responses are escaping us and pushing us hither and thither and making life difficult because they cannot be properly directed. What would it be for any of us? Elements out of control. I mean, I think a lot of people have difficulty with their astral body. There are these reactions which flare up and create distortion and prevent clear thinking on the matter. Sometimes I think, if you have a fourth-ray mind and a sixth-ray astral body, it's a more difficult situation than to have, let's say, a clear fifth-ray mind and a second-ray astral body. At least the astral body will not interrupt the clarity of the thinking. Of course, and I'm not now opting for the preeminence of the fifth-ray mind. All types of mind are needed, absolutely, but different problems arise in connection with them. So anyway, we enter this third phase, and this stage of glamour. We're looking through various stages of glamour, from outright materialism and captivation by what is obvious but not true, into a condition of realized lack of control, and then finally we're getting into this stage of glamour that's often called the Arjuna experience. Today, the world Arjuna, which is humanity as a whole, at least those who are ready to fight the fight for the higher values, the world Arjuna is facing the pairs of opposites. Now, sometimes these pairs of opposites can be considered soul and personality, or then spirit and matter. So the world Arjuna is facing the pairs of opposites, just as does the individual disciple, ready when these pairs of opposites have been resolved into a unity to tread the path of discipleship. And what we have here is increasing soul infusion. Now, have you maybe made a judgment with respect to yourself about soul infusion, and where it is deficient in your own case and where it seems to be successful? We know the old story that the first degree initiate is, let us say, 25% soul infused, or at least has in the various vehicles 25% of atomic matter. The second degree initiate, let's call it 50% soul infused, third degree 75%, and finally we have the great predominance of atomic matter in the vehicles when we take the fourth initiation, which of course is a reason for the shedding of those personality vehicles, because just think of it, if you have 100% atomic matter in the etheric body, in how is the physical body going to fare? And in most cases it is lost, though under other circumstances it can be temporarily sustained. So there's something about the first ray destructiveness of atomic matter which assists in the relinquishing of the personality vehicles at the fourth initiation, and also even the relinquishment of the causal body at that particular initiation. This kind of process, of course, lies ahead of us. We wouldn't be here doing as we're doing if it did not, but at least we can begin to prepare. So the Arjuna experience, he asks us at various points, see that you battle, he says. Well, we're in the battle microcosmically, and then if we've managed to bring ourselves through that, we enter a more participation in a more macrocosmic battle that humanity is having with its own dweller on the threshold. So here's another enumeration which seems to go under the Arjuna experience. Fighting is operating on all levels. Number one, the masses in all lands are wrestling with the first pair of opposites upon the physical plane. This is the Lemurian initiation, we might say, the wrestling between the etheric physical aspect and the dense physical aspect. This was the initiatory process back in the Lemurian days, and it is recapitulated at certain periods in the developmental life of the human being. So, can we, from the inner etheric realm, gain control of the instinctual tendencies under the third ray of the dense physical body? When resolution has taken place, these masses will step onto the path of purification now, and this will be it will operating both physically and astrally, and eventually mentally, because we do have to learn how to purify all of our vehicles and raise the vibratory standard of the atoms in all of these vehicles. Probably, we're engaged in that all the time, and at the stage at which we find ourselves right now, maybe not even so aware that we are doing it. It is such a habitual process as we attempt to elevate our functionality. So eventually, the wrestling match is going to take place, and then there's a conscious attempt as one begins to prepare for the first initiation to step onto the path of physical purification, and then, will come astral purification, and then learning how to think straight, mental purification eventually as we approach the third degree. So in terms of the masses, he says, this is rapidly taking place, and the need that we see fulfilled in so many ways that counsel how to live a better life physically tell us that we are beginning to purify our approach to physicality, diet, exercise, all those kinds of things. This is rapidly taking place. It might be added that this is a long and slow process, because the consciousness is, in this stage, not the intelligent awareness of the thinking man, but the blind consciousness of the physical man plus the forces of nature themselves. And, we can liken what he just said to the first two larger stages, which are materialism and the encountering of forces out of control. So a lot of people are still here, although I would say that if you look over the world, there are more people who are in the Atlantean stage of consciousness than the Lemurian stage. There is, when you go into the Aryan stage of consciousness, there is a kind of recapitulation of the earlier Lemurian because the numbers are resonant with each other. They're along the line of activity and physicality and mentality. So in the Aryan group, we have a lot of emphasis upon sport and the conditioning of the body under the proper aspect of will. But let's just say there is a wrestling match going on here, and rather quickly, ideas connected with purification are taking place, even though the human being who follows this may simply inherit this from the mass consciousness and not have necessarily thought his way into it. Okay, so this is what the masses are doing. How many are the members of the masses? Well, they certainly outnumber the intelligentsia, that's for sure. Now we come to the average educated system, at least this kind of educated citizen, the kind of education which is, let's say, conventional and not esoteric, philosophical, deeply psychological education. It's a more superficial type of education. The average educated citizen in all lands is facing today the Arjuna experience and the pairs of opposites upon the astral plane. Now, what might these be? There are so many, of course, but the general principle is let's see here. No, that's not right. Okay. So it's either the desire for the things of the soul or the things of the personality, and that's really fighting itself out right now on the world stage. And in this battle between democracy and authoritarianism, which is predicted to be fought out in the United States and is being fought out in the United States, these two types of opposing desires are active. There are some people who just cannot conceive of living beyond what we recognize as the personality. That's for them the entirety of their nature, of their identity. And other people see that there is a higher of the pairs of opposites, and they try to rather selflessly put their emphasis upon those higher things. So anyway, the average educated citizen finds himself here facing this Arjuna experience. Let's see if I can get this the way it should be. Okay. Hence, the intense feeling abroad in the world, because after all, there's an astral focus. And remember, this is being written at the time that the Second World War is gathering. It's going to be so interesting coming up shortly, as DK says, around the year 2025, to see what kind of tone he adopts and whether it is more mental or whether there is such an intensity of feeling involved in it, addressing those particular conditions of the astral body, which the average man today is the victim of, let us say. Hence the intense feeling abroad in the world. Hence also The search for illumination, a soul value, because in a way, is it not so? The soul is light. The soul is that which leads to revelation through the casting of light upon that which is hidden. Hence also the search for illumination through education, it can come that way, through religion, through the many agencies of mental destruction or instruction, all right, with the consequent growth of knowledge, wisdom, and right relationships. So now he's further subdividing, and he's saying that these people will normally fall into two classes. Okay, let's just see. Some people are joining us, and welcome to you. Yeah, welcome to you. Okay, so now we're dealing with the average educated citizen, and we're thinking about those people who are tending more towards an understanding of the mind as the soul can begin to illumine that mind. We're talking about the higher of the types of values which occur on the astral plane, the types of desires which occur upon the astral plane. Okay, so these people are falling into two classes, and they are reaching out towards higher things. Okay, so let's put it this way. These people who are reaching out towards higher things fall into two classes. Okay, now what are they? A, those who are aware of the necessity for decision and discrimination in thinking and choice. Sounds like the concrete mind, doesn't it? At least it does to me. But who are not yet truly aware of the implications or of the indications. Where does it all lead? Something better has to emerge, but where does it really lead in terms of the elevation of the thought process? They do not know. And there is a special name for this. They are called the bewilderment phase of Arjuna's plight. We do remember that as Arjuna faced the two aspects of his family, he didn't want to put his weight on either side, because he held both of the sides of his family in a certain dearness, we might say. They were both dear to him. So he's bewildered. What shall he do? Because after all, they're both members of my family, right? So this is what happens when the Libra situation has to give way to the Scorpio situation, and you have to really throw your energy onto the side of the soul. But first, you just don't know what to do. Okay, the bewilderment phase of Arjuna's plight, and to racial, national, and individual glamour, they have added the spiritual glamour, which intensifies the fog. The spiritual glamour meaning, where shall I place my emphasis as I try to rise? I'm attached to both, but a decision must be made. Okay, so we're talking about a division in the people who are reaching for something higher. This is the stage of bewilderment. Well, I'm not sure that so many of us are in this stage of bewilderment right now. I think we at least theoretically understand that there are higher values, and the relinquishment of certain lower, though dear values has to be effected, painful though it might be to detach. Now, here's the next phase of these people who are reaching into the higher possibilities. Now, all during this, try to recognize yourself and where you stand. He wouldn't have given this book as a seed thought book unless it was really necessary. So the next group of those who are reaching higher, those who have emerged out of this condition and are becoming aware of their problem. So there is, let's just say, instead of bewilderment, there is greater clarity of understanding. They see the pairs of opposites. Well, it depends on which pairs of opposites we're going to deal with. Always the pairs of opposites keep changing. But for ourselves, the beginning of dealing with the pairs of opposites as we enter into the second set of petals in the egoic lotus is to deal with a higher self and a lower self, to deal with the presence of a sense presence of the soul and the familiar personality. So they see the pairs of opposites and are entering upon the, and here's the quote, recognition stage of Arjuna's release. Now, all this can take a long time before we really clarify our values. This is right out of the Bhagavad Gita, when he uses such a thing, a phrase as the form of God. There's a whole beautiful section in the Bhagavad Gita where there is the revelation by Krishna to Arjuna of the form of God, and one sees that great unity. It's one of the really inspiring sections of that little book. They see the form of God and the indwelling reality within that form. That's so important, you get the sense of being two and yet being one and yet being two. When you look at your outer life, do you sense that inner being who would survive, who would continue, who would remain, as it were, standing, though the form would drop away? This is an important recognition. They see the form of God and the indwelling reality within that form, and are arriving at the decision to let the warrior carry on the fight. And, the warrior is not the personal warrior. We know that, right? So not the personal PR. Okay. There it is. Personal warrior, but the soul as the warrior. And having done all to stand, there's some beautiful sections in the old commentary in esoteric psychology too, where it talks about how the fourth ray type comes to the point where the inner warrior really takes over, and it's a very different thing from waging war on the personality level, using the forces of the personality. One is more guided in this battle by what the soul sees and understands. So anyway, these people who are in the process of release, they see the form of God and the indwelling reality. Let us find that inner God within ourselves, the real human being, the real man, the indwelling reality within that form, and are arriving at the decision to let the warrior carry on the fight. And this is an aspect of the old attitude, not my will, Father, but thine be done. Okay. They will then, when right decision and choice have been made, stand up and fight, and will find themselves no longer on the path of purification, but upon the path of discipleship. So, what we're saying here in an interesting way, the disciple is a warrior, especially, in the fourth kingdom, the warring kingdom, which is tending towards a desirable and plan-oriented peace. Not peace at any price, but peace as it is allowed and encouraged within the divine plan. So, all of us, we are hoping that we are treading the path of discipleship and not just the later stages of the path of aspiration, and we have to take that inner stand, warrior, I am, and from the battle I emerge triumphant. And that I is a lot different than just the personality. So all of this, the general third phase that we're working through, we're moving beyond purification, beyond lack of control. We're moving into real control of the battle by the inner warrior. Now, as we know, there is a science, an art and science to, what should we call it, the martial arts. And I think a lot of people who study the martial arts, when they get to this psychological phase, they will know what to do. Now, we are presumably, disciples, and so he can speak to the people in his Dissipation of Glamour group, and maybe he can speak to us as well and say, with this stage, you are all familiar. The aspirants such as are found in this group of students. Remember, everybody's an aspirant, and we can be the aspirant always to the next initiation. Even if we're a disciple, we're an aspirant. These terms are very fluid, shall we say. So the aspirants to initiation, the first three initiations in relation to which DK trains us, the aspirants found in this group of students need no instruction from me. Well, he's given a lot already, hasn't he? As to the treading of the path out of glamour into light, though he has given us a meditation and a method, a cult method of treading the path out of glamour and into light. The rules are well known. The glamours to which you are susceptible are equally familiar. The glamours to which humanity is prone are well recognized by you. Okay, so we've had some training, and we should know a little bit of what we're doing, especially since he helps us with certain occult techniques. It remains but for you to follow the ancient way of Raja Yoga, the kingly science of the soul, as it is called. Who is the king? The king is the inner warrior, the king is the inner soul, the inner guiding entity, the inner individual, who is the king. It remains but for you to follow the ancient way of Raja Yoga and to bring in the mind, only for people who are beginning to have not maybe full mental polarization yet, but at least mental focus. Bring in the mind as a dispelling agency, and we're doing that all the time in the methods we use, and thus learn to stand in the light between the pairs of opposites, and through that light achieve freedom by treading the noble middle way. So what do we have? Basically, we have the personality, we have the soul, and we have the disciple between the personality and the soul. So the disciple stands between the personality and the soul. Later we can deal with spirit and matter, but first we have to manage some effectiveness in this question of bringing soul and personality together. Sometimes, now here's a cautionary note, and we can all learn from that, because DK shares his own inner state of mind, and we see he has a genuine concern here, and it touches on each one of us, because, the degree to which we may apply anything, apply what we know, is here referenced. Sometimes, my brothers, I feel that you know so much theoretically, but have worked out relatively so little. Well, that is really a statement that all of us have to take to heart. The old, I've always amused by the idea that even a donkey can carry a library on his back, That doesn't mean that he has assimilated or applied what's in that library. So there's a lot of that donkey-like carrying of the contents of the books without really applying what could be known. I ask myself whether I do not shoulder an unreasonable responsibility by giving you any more instructions. Now notice, this is written in the 30s, and another 15 years went on with him giving the most profound instructions. So I guess he was willing to take on that responsibility, but he explains why. But I remind myself that I write for others as well as for you, and that my time is short for this particular service. That was 90 years ago, and he does say something interesting. He says elsewhere, the day of opportunity will not always be with us. Now, a 500-year period of the second ray ends in 2075. It began in 1575. The only thing that will offset that possible dangerous descent into the sort of scientific magical area of the fifth and seventh ray will be the growing presence of the hierarchy that carries a basically second ray vibration. So he's aware that there's only so much time to really give this out. And when you think about the great second ray outpouring that he is trying to manage, at least I think of the years 2025 to 2075, a 50-year period in which this outpouring can occur because the energy will be supportive of it. As to when the Christ will reappear, excuse me, I don't believe it can be before another 100 years, or approximately, and before the real change into the Aquarian age in the year 2117, according to what Master DK has given. There's just too much to do, and meanwhile, we're not exactly in the period of the forerunner, but we certainly are in the period of active outer physical preparation. Now let's see. Well, I think I'll do just a little bit more. This is an interesting section, an important section, and we're dealing here with the ascent from the response of the masses to the average citizen and the Arjuna experience. And we're going to enter yet another one, but maybe we'll wait till the next time. The resolution of these dualities takes place when the soul, the true spiritual man, well, we can call it the soul in incarnation, no longer identifies itself with the opposites. Remember, this, what I'm going to say here is important. The disciple is not the personality. Something in between this personality mechanism and the soul on its own plane, that is the disciple. I guess I can say the disciple is really the soul in incarnation. Okay. So we have to stand then free upon this middle way, preserving our balance, and, you know, if we try to live excessively the life of the soul or excessively the life of the personality, there's danger on either side. Eventually, of course, that danger has to be faced. The disciple, if he stands at the middle point, and this is the Buddha's noble middle path, the disciple then sees the lighted way ahead, along which he learns to go without being drawn into the glamorous worlds, the high glamours and the low glamours, which stretch on either hand. He travels straight towards the goal. Now, we're always dealing with attraction and repulsion on this path, and there are false attractions and false repulsions. We're about to enter now the stage of the average, intelligent, thinking man, the initiate of the first and second degree, the disciple. He puts all of these together, and we'll do that the next time. And that will be 1 week from now, and it'll be on the 14th. Already we'll be into some of the work we are intended to do in the 3 days of preparation before the Gemini full moon. So that will be, I guess, Friday the 14th, and it will be on the night schedule. Tuija and I will have to be gone for a few days near the end of the month, and that includes a Monday and Tuesday, the 1st and 2nd, on which generally there's not anything offered. But it will also include the 3rd and the 4th, and we'll try to be back with you by the time we reach the 5th. So we're good to go. I think this is the 7th, the 14th, and I think we're good to go on the 21st. But when we reach the 28th, we will not be available for a, well, maybe we will. I'm not sure. Maybe we will be available. We'll let you know as we go on. So I'm going to go back here, and now you think while I'm doing this of what you might like to mention or discuss, and this is the end of Dissipation of Glamour, and number 113, okay, right here. So, and instead of beginning, we have end, 113, and I don't know if we've made it to page 100 yet. We're not exactly racing, are we? Yeah, we're on page 101, it looks like. Is that correct, Michael? I think so.
Yes, it is 101.
Okay, very good. So, and then the next one will be beginning of Dissipation of Glamour Initiative number 114, and academic reading number 54, and it will be from page 101 to whatever. I'm trying to go for a bit more thoroughness rather than to just race along and pretend that we understand things. This business of glamour, about which both Master DK and Alice Bailey have a certain, the word they use was horror, is deeply ingrained in the thinking of humanity, and if we think that we have completely overcome it, probably we have not. So we have to be very cautious that we don't fall into this distortion of reality which prevents the true impact of reality from entering our consciousness. Okay, so do you have thoughts? Yeah.
Kim has a written question. What period ends in 2025?
2025.
Or 2075.
The 500-year second race cycle, which began in 1575, ends in 2075, which is why the day of opportunity will not always be with us. Let's see if I can find this thing. If you go to Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, I'll try to find it for you, Kim, here. So, because it's always worth seeing where we are, if possible. And I just want to make this maybe a little bit bigger so we can see better. Okay, and then put our view finder up here. Always press that hidden, otherwise you won't get the page numbers. And I think it's on page 26. And notice here, Ray 2, in manifestation since 1575, and the cycle there is a 500-year cycle. There's, every 100 years is first ray, everything having to do with 1, 10, 100, 1,000, and so forth. When it comes to the second ray, it's a 500-year cycle, 550, 500, etc., and on into the thousands. And ray 3 is a 900-year cycle, 990, 900, 9,000. And, you can piece this together. Stephen Pugh has done some good work on ray 4, basically a 25-year cycle, or a 250 or 2,500, etc. And ray 5, a 35-year cycle, 350, 3,500, etc. Ray 6, DK himself is kind of given. It's 15, 150, 1,500, 15,000. So it's based on 1 and 5, which sums to 6, interestingly. And ray 7, the Tibetan is given as basically 770, 700, 7,000, and so forth. Well, the science of cycles, it's a huge thing. And if we are able to even begin mastering it just a little bit, we are on our way to all knowledge on the third level of the atmic plane. Now, here's something that was put together by Keith Bailey, and he made a compendium of these things, and I've shown it to you before, but basically that's it right there. I went a little bit too far. Whoop, it's still going too far. I don't know what's the matter with me. I can't settle on it, but there, right here is all knowledge on the third level of the atmic plane. And every one of these sublevels has its own special powers or cities, you might call them. And some of them are of so high a nature that DK just doesn't give them because he says they pertain to Chohans of the 6th and 7th degree and not to us. So what have we got here? Okay.
Rebecca had her hand up, and then we have 2 more questions.
Okay.
Written.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, look, I'm just going to go ahead and deal with Kim before Suzanne here. Do you think the state of enlightenment equates with the first initiation? I think it equates with the third initiation, our first real enlightenment. Of course, always through the initiatory process, there is some kind of gradual illumination occurring. But what we call the enlightenment, the satori, there are various names for it, the illumination, that kind of enlightenment towards which humanity at first strives has to do with the third initiation, in my view. Suzanne asks, could you expand upon the idea of false attractions and repulsions? Well, basically you are attracted to that which is of lesser or no value, and you are repulsed by that which is of real value. So everything is upside down, You suddenly, let's just say, you may see how very serious and demanding the spiritual path is. You look at the Buddha's Eightfold Path, Noble Eightfold Path, and you say, that doesn't appeal to me at all. I would call that a false repulsion. Or you look at some teacher or source that is promising you a great elevation if you'll just believe something totally crazy, and I would call that a false attraction. So attracted towards that which is not of real value and repulsed by that which is of real value. And of course there are real attractions, attraction to the good and repulsion against evil and that which distorts the possibility of arriving at truth. So yes, indeed, there may be true ones rather than false ones. Okay, so Kim goes further. So what is the first initiation then, as far as what it feels like? Well, it's a state of the Holy Spirit. In a sense, it's a state of great enthusiasm. It's a state of a real divine infusion into the etheric body, where we're finally really able, through the sacral center, to discipline our physical plane life and begin to draw the energies up into a new form of creativity. I would say, we don't want to assume anything, but a lot of people who enter this teaching and who really stick with it and are really sincere about it can be presumed to have taken the first initiation. Now, somewhere I have here, let's see if I can find it. Okay, so AAB extracts, and I'm going to see if I can find it quickly. First initiation, because there's so many references here. All true aspirants have taken the first initiation. Yeah, that's one of the important ones. First and second initiation period for accepted disciples. First initiation, little chelaship. Here, the defining characteristics. This is it. So this is found in Dina. And, I believe that our colleague BL has made it possible for the extracts, which I have prepared over many years, to be available to everybody who wants them. And Michael, do you recall where they are kept? Are they kept on Makara, or are they kept on the Moria?
No.
Yeah.
BL posted them in the on campus, the Moria Federation campus,
okay.
in the general commentary section.
Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know if it means you have to join the Moria Federation to get them. That's not my objective, but they are available, and there are thousands of them. And because I've been rather careful over the years of reading to just stop and pull out important references and pull them all together. This is one. Now, we assume that members of the new group of world servers, they're really second-degree initiates if we talk about a full membership. So they should watch with care for all those who show signs of having passed through the birth experience. That's the first initiation, and should help them towards greater maturity. Now, here's a statement, and there's other statements which amplify all this. They should assume that all those who truly love their fellow men, who are interested in the esoteric teaching, and I might add spiritual teaching, and who seek to discipline themselves in order to attain greater beauty of life, are initiates and have undergone the first initiation. When they discover those who are seeking mental polarization, at least mental focus. Mental polarization comes after the second initiation, okay? When they discover those who are seeking mental polarization and who evidence a desire and an aspiration to think and to know, coupled with the distinguishing marks of those who have taken the first initiation, as we don't relinquish those, they can, in all probability, safely assume that such people have taken the second initiation or are on the verge of doing so. And then it tells us a few things here. All true aspirants have taken the first initiation, and here's another couple of requirements. This fact is indicated by their intensive struggle to grow into the spiritual life, to follow the way of determined orientation to the things of the Spirit, and to live by the light of that Spirit. I believe, he says, that many who read my words will recognize these determinations as the basic motivation of their lives. So let's see how much is in here. What I might do is I'm going to see if it fits, and I'll put it in the chat box. Then you can copy it from there, and if it's excessive, then let's see. Send the chat to where? How do I get this, Michael? Wait a second. That's Harmony, Beauty, and Truth. And 2020. Oh, goodness. Let's try that. That's going to be a lot of That's going to be a lot of, or on the verge of doing so. Okay, there. You have something there if you want that little reference. But like I say, the best thing to do is to go to where our colleague BL has this long list and long list of references, and to then really study them and see what you learn as a result. Okay, very good. Okay, so are there other questions or thoughts?
Rebecca has had her hand raised for a long time.
Okay, Rebecca, here we go. And let's see. Rebecca, you are self-muted, so maybe you want to unmute yourself. There you go. Yep, now you're there. Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Rebecca. Yeah.
My raised arm is very sore.
What is sore? What did you say?
My raised arm.
Okay, I'm just trying to. I think I'm a little hard of hearing, but anyway, just go on and elaborate. Yeah, you've been having your hand up for a long time. Okay.
Yes, I was just making a joke. It's rather a large question, but it's regarding was individual glamour an aspect of the so-called failure of the flowering of the seed groups? If we can, I know that's a big question, but if we can just focus on whether glamour played a role in that so-called failure.
Well, that is a big question, and let's just say I wouldn't. He did say they would be quite a success from a certain point of view of the individual. They did not fully live up to their group potential, but then the whole project is a 275-year project. So, when he resumes working with them probably in the next installment, there may be no failure at all. And when I look at glamour in general, it's a very ancient thing. And it really began in Atlantean times, long, long ago, even in early Atlantean times. And that takes us back to the unimaginable figure of about 12 million years. It simply had to do with the effect of moon-chain, highly developed but rather evil types upon the developing consciousness of the newer types of humanity who were individualized on the earth chain. So there are certain groups who did everything they could to foster distortion, to foster distorted desires. So glamour has been with us a very, very long time. But let's just say that glamour was at the root of World War I and World War II, and DK had to discontinue the ninefold seed group work because of the Second World War. He just couldn't put that kind of energy into it because things were so very, very serious. So he reorganized everything into a new seed group of 24, no longer specifically focused upon the 9 areas, which will again be the focus when he takes all of this again into his thought and emphasis. So it's world glamour in a way that caused the war, and the war caused the discontinuance of the seed groups before they could really fully develop and flower, you see. But he says still a lot of good was done, and a lot of disciples individually did reach a very a position of benefit because of the teaching that he gave. So glamour is very, very old. Glamour is very pervasive, and glamour contributes to delaying the progress of disciples in the world today, and that's why we have to fight against it. Does that cover a little bit there, Rebecca?
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome back.
Yes, thank you. It's it's good to be back. I think that Tuija and I and others that are running the conference, we don't get a whole lot of sleep while we're there, and it takes a little while to recover if I'm getting back. So if I'm blurring my words and thoughts, you'll know I'm not quite emerged out of the realm into which I was forced myself to enter. Anyway.
Thank you also for the live streaming, which I participated in and am very, very grateful for.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Tuija does a lot of that, and I'm the engineer, so when things go wrong, I'm responsible. But anyway, we are continuing our streaming work, and tomorrow we'll be on the Soul of Nations, and the next day, as with every week, on the Attracting Money for Hierarchical Purposes. So we'll keep that up as much as we can, obviously, because even though some of the meditations are exactly repetitive, he did want us to do them every week, and this is giving us a chance to do them in the group in the group manner. I see some of you here who were actually at the conference, and I hope you're recovering a little bit better than I am. I'm almost there, though. I'm almost sane once again. So thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. All right. Any other questions or thoughts that you would want to bring up? Before we get into our meditation on glamour. Yeah. Where was the text copied? Okay. I'm not sure. Oh, well, I hope. Is it there?
It did not end up in the chat box.
Oh, goodness. Where should it end up? Here it is. Look. First initiation, defining characteristics. It's all there. No? It's somewhere here. Oh, I didn't send it. Maybe that's the problem. How about that? Maybe that helps?
It's there now.
Okay, thank you. Always press the send button, otherwise things will not go anywhere. All right. Thank you. All right, friends, then if we don't have any further thoughts or questions on these matters, they go quite deep, and I just want to welcome some of you who have come aboard. We've kind of, doubled our numbers here or whatever. We still don't have everybody back because it's a little bit difficult to get started again after 2 months break. So, but I want to welcome you all, and yep. Go ahead, Michael.
One last question from Anne Veronica. Please speak a bit more about the middle path.
Right. Well, there's always going to be a middle path. And by the way, it looks like someone else wants to speak here too. I saw a hand up, and that would be Karen Grisbeck.
That is Karen.
Yeah, we'll take you on, Karen, in just a minute. Always the point of being consciousness will be ascending into ever wider areas of registration and capability. But, even though there is an ascent into greater and greater scope of expression and registration, there's always going to be something higher and always going to be something lower. So we are constantly treading a middle path, and danger lies on either side, because if we are too spiritual, we'll simply lose our practicality, and if we're too practical, we'll lose our spirituality. So no matter how high we are, I mean, in other words, to what great being does the planetary logos aspire, even as it's managing its own personality? It's on its own kind of a noble middle path. The solar logos is above, and all of the elemental aspects of the personality life of the planetary logos lie below. And thus it goes for every solar logos aspiring towards a cosmic logos, but directing its own solar system in the personal sense. And thus it goes for a cosmic logos in relation to the supercosmic logos that we call the one about whom naught may be said, and on and on and on, until we, it's hopeless to use language there, but until we reach the top. And then we're going to discover some horrific, tremendous sight that a universal logos managing its own universe has above it and beyond it a state of post-universal absolute infinity. I have to pause there and say that, every universal logos is just another next to nothingness. It's just it's an absolute infinitesimal, and it's practically nothing at all. And beyond it is the true state towards which everything aspires. Now, the only thing, and I can't even call it a thing, and language drops away here, but the only thing that does not and cannot aspire, because it is every possibility forever, is the absolute or absoluteness. I've finally begun to work on this book that I've been collecting thoughts in for years, and it's going to be called Seeds of the Infinite, and I don't know, it will take me another year or two to finish it, I'm not sure, but it deals with this kind of thinking that finally gets people into the abstract mind. We can talk about the abstract mind from the concrete perspective all the time, and it doesn't mean that we're in the abstract mind at all. So hopefully it will be a little bit towards building the Antakarana, and then we can learn to confirm that in the Buddhic sphere of pure reason. But the abstract mind is a step along the way towards pure reason. It's coming. Okay, so now I've got a couple of... I'll go here to Karen and then Veronique. Okay, Karen, you are there. Okay, go ahead.
Well, Michael, because we're talking at Glamour, I just can't resist asking you about what your thoughts are regarding today being the 75th anniversary of D-Day and our president's recent visit to the UK. What are your thoughts about how that might affect the UK's decision on Brexit?
Yeah, well, you're more the political thinker than I am. I don't think that his presence, unless there's been some sort of bribery or under the table offers going on, will have a great effect. I think this is basically he's come down heavy on separativeness, but the forces of unity are still very strong, and this is a president, in my view, who is simply adding to a great weight of disrespect for the United States and for himself personally. So I although he's trying to promote the likes of Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage and what's his last name? Nigel Farage, and the separatists among them, the tendency towards separatism, even though we may have to endure it for a while longer, I think are doomed. So a lot, there's very much in the mix, and much depends upon how he does in solving his own problems in a condition of great unpopularity, because people abroad will not want to follow one who is losing the faith of his own people. So I'm just hoping that he is not pushing things over the edge. And I don't think if people are really honest and look at it clearly, but of course, the world is filled with glamour, so they're not looking clearly. But if that kind of weight on the side of clarity can be gathered, I don't think he'll have much effect at all. And it strikes me that there's a visual, a kind of a visual analogy going on here. We're entering the year 2020, which means perfect vision. So I'm just hoping that this means that there can be a sufficient dissipation of glamour so that people can at least see some of the implications of what they are so passionately devoted to doing in a semi-mindless way. I'm not terribly worried about that. I think he's got enough problems at home, and I think I think it's a much bigger process than just one man, no matter how people might be otherwise bribed and so forth. This gets into the dirty part of politics, but it goes on, obviously. That's my view, and I know that you're a thinker along these lines, so you'll have your own point of view.
Well, I'm just hopeful that, the anniversary of D-Day might help people remember the importance of our unity.
That's it, yeah. I mean, the French, the English, other allies, the U.S., and all of that. I don't know where that took place in relation to the full moon of Gemini or anything of that nature. I'd have to study that. But obviously, when the forces of reconstruction were very strong, right about in the middle of Gemini, this D-Day occurred, and it was not the way of division. Obviously, no group alone could have pulled that off. It took everybody, and a lot of people have made fun of Dwight Eisenhower, and all that. He used to like to read Western novels. Okay, let's give that to him. But he was the man for the job, and with the sun in Libra and Aries rising, and Mars at the very top of the chart in Capricorn on the midheaven, he, organized all that somehow. And you know what his name means? It means iron scythe, Eisenhower. Okay, metallic scythe, So obviously he was a great first-ray soul in some respect, with a second-ray personality, clearly, and was able to organize that tremendous attack on behalf of the forces of light under the second ray, even though first-ray methods had to be used. So I just think that everything that's going on with Brexit and in the United States with division is against the spirit of what D-Day really was, if people can hold it in their consciousness, if they can hold it long enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes, Michael.
The moon phase on June 6, 1945 was 19% visible. The new moon was June 9th, 1945.
Okay, So it was heading towards the new moon. Because
correct.
June 6th, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, in Gemini, the forces of reconstruction are active. So, deep things are going on, obviously. Now, let's see, we have another. I saw Veronique here somewhere. Yes, Veronique, did you have something that you wanted to yourself muted, and anything that you wanted to question or comment on? If you I saw your hand up. I think I did. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You hear me?
Yes, I do. Even though your microphone is still orange, somehow I hear you. But go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was having a question about what I hear when talking about glamour and on the ways and the different stages. What I hear again is a necessity of working on oneself to purify oneself.
Mm.
I mean, so that we don't stay that donkey with all the books and that have all the knowledge, but have to achieve real wisdom, we need to be aware at all times that we are moving in veils of glamour and illusion. Even if we are taking off some veils or see some veils, that there are always more and more veils of glamour and illusion. And that purification is part of that war or that inner conflict or that, the fourth ray, conflict through harmony, to be able to see and to become that what we are aspiring to become, what the disciple is aspiring to become.
Yes. Yeah, so a lot of application is required, and it's not just book knowledge, is it? You know, it's like the DK was, he was questioning himself. Have I given out too much book knowledge which you are not applying, and what kind of karma does that put on my shoulders? He was musing to himself. And the whole question of illusion is a relative one, you know. Let's just say that by the time we reach the third initiation, a fair number of illusions are lifted, but it's nothing compared to the illusions lifted by the time the sixth degree is reached, and the illusions of the cosmic physical plane are lifted at the ninth initiation. So this is a very ongoing thing in the field of mind, and there are always these veils upon reality. So we have, no matter how much we've accomplished, we have to get used to the idea that wherever we are, there's always more to be accomplished, and not settle into any condition of foolish pride as if we've, you know, accomplished it all, because it just would be proof that we have not. So, you know, onward we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years still to deal with the cosmic physical plane. Yeah, I guess.
Yes, this is exactly what I meant with the fact that we need to do this ongoing work, and even if we're studying books like Glamour, the ongoing work is always on the inside.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the most difficult part.
Application is always tougher than getting the words and putting them together and talking as if we can make sense, you know. We can do that, yeah. But, you know, in the East, they distinguish between the talkers and the doers. And the talkers, a little bit pejorative there. Yeah, you know certain things theoretically, but the very difficult task of making it really work in your nature, that may not have been done. And that's what we have to do, absolutely. Okay, appreciate your thought. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Okay, now, let's see. I think we have pretty much everybody. And then we'll go into, yeah, Michael?
We should be ready for the meditation.
Okay, very good. Now, I always hear your microphone stirring, so, okay. I kind of know it's you. Okay. So what kind of glamour will we meditate on today? Well, you know, you just look at the world, and the big battle between democracy and a truly, a spiritually founded democracy, and fascism and sort of personalism in the larger political field, is the inability to distinguish between soul values and personality values. It's just like, this is the crux of the whole thing. If we look at democracy versus some kind of early Leonian authoritarianism, we're simply dealing with the soul and the personality. And the tendency of so many, I guess the great majority at this time, to choose personal values over the higher and more inclusive soul values. So we'll work here on the glamour of cherishing personality values rather than the higher and more inclusive values of the soul. And I think, you know, all we have to do is just look at the deliberations that are occurring in the Congress and the Senate and the Parliament, in other determinative bodies, and we're just going to see the difference between selfishness and unselfishness. The soul is essentially, finally, selfless, the true soul, which is the triad and beyond. And the personality is inherently localized of the third aspect and selfish, unless directed otherwise. So it's the main problem, and that warfare is going on For every one of us, the warfare is continuing for every one of us, and it's continuing for humanity as a whole, as the humanity's dweller on the threshold is fighting it out with its personal, its higher nature. And we have to participate in that. So let's go on then, and we'll just enter the silence a little bit, maybe not 10 minutes, but just come together in the silence. So that we really do get that feeling of uniting with each other, first as one fusing consciousness, and then if we can realize it as one being. That's another step, and an important one. And we'll use the protective formula because, if we don't, we are taking an undue risk because we are dealing with the plane of the greatest turmoil, and DK even uses the word illusion, not meaning, in its Kama monastic, he's not meaning a purely mental state, but this is the plane of turbulent distortion, and there's danger. So we're making a lighted cross, and we know how to do that, the cross of divinity. So, as a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. Before each of us, then, the protective cross, the cross of divinity, in this case with a longer vertical, and before the group, conceived as a whole, that same cross. And keep the light of that cross burning, because we're, at least imaginatively and probably to an extent really, entering this area of turbulent, obsessive forces. Now we work with the light, we're familiar with it. We're focusing the dual light of matter and of mind. In this particular case, it's probably pretty much the etheric physical light and the light of the lower mind at first. So we lift the etheric physical light imaginatively onto the mental plane, and blend it with the light of the lower mind. Two lights become as one. Try to get the feel of that. The vital light of matter, etheric physical, and the light of the reasoning mind. And then to complete the task, we recognize, at least imaginatively, the light of the soul. Hovering above, but ready to descend also onto the concrete levels of mind. It's all probably taking place on the fourth sub-level of the mental plane. That soul light is revelatory, intuitively revelatory, and has a much wider, greater kind of revelatory power, and the three become one. Through this threefold light as one, we can think, we can be sensitive and conscious, we can be vitalized as we go forth with our work upon the astral plane. And so then we say, followed by the sacred word, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. Eventually, if we learn to use this light, it will not only help with the dissipation of glamour, but it will open up the true light of day on the Buddhic plane. Under the sign Scorpio, the light of day. The true intuitive light. So in the light we've gathered, we will see a greater light. The light of straight knowledge, immediate apprehension, direct understanding, and the hierarchy works with this all the time. Now the formula. This is how we approach, and we visualize as we go on. We visualize a great searchlight being turned on, and the triple light as one becomes the searchlight. It's turned on to the astral plane as we use this formula. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out. linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. One is inner subjective and the other is subtle, and we note that. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light, we work and turn the darkness into day. Now we want to strengthen the beam that we are projecting onto the astral plane, astral plane, at least imagined. And we say then together, as we imagine the strengthening of the beam through the spiritual will, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Now this goal is the dissipation of these glamours associated with personality values rather than the wider, subtler, uplifting desires and values of the soul. So we're working with this brilliant beam. Some can imagine it coming out of the Ajna Center or the group Ajna Center. It has much of the fifth ray in it and also the dispersing power of the first ray. And so we think about this glamour, what has been lost, what has failed because of this glamour of cherishing personality values rather than the higher and more inclusive values of the soul. What has been lost, not achieved. Think about that for a minute. And humanity, of course, has had many setbacks and could be in a much higher state, comparable to the state of the humanity on the planet Venus, but we have a lot of ground now to make up. So we'll use these words of power, visualizing as we go the group beam and its destructive, dispersive effect. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of the cherishing of personality values rather than the higher, expansive values of the soul. These cherished personality values are rejected. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour from affecting humanity. This quality is a focus, upon that which is lower in man and not that which is higher. The power of our united light destroys the life, the vitality behind this glamour of the cherishing of personality values rather than soul values. The life, the sustaining life, is destroyed. And so, as we do this, we see our group beam penetrating into this glamour and weakening it and dissipating it until it just can't stand up. And the opposite, the soul values, are cherished by the kinds of desires that are higher. And just as a reminder, when you hit upon a mantra that really is meaningful for you or really works for you, you do repeat it 3 times. Now, we're going to go into the silence here for 5 minutes of intensity of purpose. We'll continue with the work, seeing yourself work as an individual, but seeing the group work also. And we can use these words of power or however you would like to approach. So 5 minutes of intensified silence as you work. So we will visualize a situation in which those forces that confine the consciousness to the realm of personality, fulfillment and satisfaction, those forces are dissipated and humanity is released into the expression, the realization of and expression of soul values, the courage to do the will through sacrifice, the love and unity of the soul, the light and revelation of the soul. Soul values take the place of the cherishing of that which is lesser, is strictly personal values. The personal ray, in short, must become the sub-ray of the soul ray. So we now withdraw our beam back onto the mental plane. We turn our attention away from the astral plane and we're refocused in the triple light as one, the vital light, the light of the soul, and the light of the reasoning mind. And we turn our searchlight off. I think we can realize that it will take a long time before we can really have an impact upon the human tendency towards glamour and distortion. We simply have to persist with this. Really, hundreds of years will be involved, and the reincarnated aspects of ourselves will be involved. But in the Aquarian age, much can be accomplished. So we'll sound the Om 3 times in conclusion, realizing that we have done some work, especially on the astral plane, but also helping to reduce the chaos of the etheric plane and reduce the separative concrete thinking of the mental plane. And when you're working on your own personal glamours, as you may realize them to be occurring, we use a somewhat similar technique. We're a little bit familiar with it, and we'll be reaching it again. They will be primarily ray glamours. No doubt we have quite a number, but there's probably one or two that really stand out and are distorting the revelation which otherwise might come. So just want to thank you for being here and reminding that tomorrow morning we have our broadcast. The broadcast link is always the same. It's the YouTube link, and these most of our programs find their way to YouTube, and if not, they are listed on makara.us. So thank you for your presence, and Tuija will be offering tomorrow work with the soul of nations. It's a big subject, and it really has to do with the improvement of the larger aggregates of people that come under the various national banners and the national ideals and the great groupings that have to arise and play their soul intended part. So lots of love, many blessings, and we hope to see you tomorrow. I'll get this out converted and to you as soon as may be possible. So all the best. Bye-bye.